their only two weapons are mind control and poison. And if we recognize the mind control and say no to the poison, they'll crumble without us putting a hand on them. So you can see that they're very nervous about what's going on right now.
I would like to welcome to the Project Vitality podcast, Jason Christoff. He is an overcoming self-sabotage expert, and we were having a bit of a laugh in the background. What did you say?
Well, every master was once a disaster, so I am an overcoming self-sabotage coach, but I was a master self-saboteur in only, say, 25 years ago, and I had to stop doing that or I wouldn't be alive to give this interview today.
I'm glad you're here. And one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on is that I know that you've got a foundation in the Czech Institute, you've studied, and you've been on a podcast with Paul. And so I know that you're a very grounded human. You know, we're all a work in progress, but you're not just all up here. You're grounded in your body as well. You've also done a lot in the parliamentary kind of more political scene, as well as being someone that coaches everyday people and business owners and people that are looking to improve their health. So I wanted to kind of learn a little bit about that and why were you speaking? What were you speaking about?
Well, I find that it's pretty bizarre when you go back and you look at it that somehow I managed to get inside the Kennedy caucus room at the U.S. Senate at the COVID roundtable. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. And I mean, there was all these people next to me to the right and to the left that you see on all the social media. And I'm right in the middle of it. So how that happened is, well, I started really researching mind control and brainwashing in regards to trying to get my health clients healthier, because they all seen that they were terrified to become better human beings. So I had phoned the Czech Institute, and I think I was talking to Vidya, and I said, you know, these people are paying me a lot of money. I'm really happy that I got the certification from Paul, but you know, there's a visible force that holding them back. Do you know anything about this? Or is anybody else experiencing this? They said, yeah, well, it's mimetic programming. It's like brainwashing and mind control. We're herd-based animals and we don't want to be different than the majority. And I said, well, you know, does it make any sense that someone would stay or poor or overweight if there was an option not to do that? And they said, yeah, no, absolutely. They're terrified to be different than the majority. And so Vidya gave me some books and articles to read. So I started studying mind control and brainwashing and behavior modification. And then I started giving talks on it about, you know, how the media mind controls people to stay small. And I use these wide array of video demonstrations of people being put under mind control to do very bizarre stuff, and it really gets people's attention. So I started doing presentations for this group of Vaccine Choice Canada, and there's a lot of medical doctors in that group, and they're like, this is the reason why everybody's doing all this illogical and irrational stuff. Can you come speak on my podcast, or can I interview you for my people? And I said, absolutely. And then one Dr. Stephen Malthouse from Canada was sitting or helping organize what's called the International COVID Summit. And it's headed by Dr. Robert Malone and Ryan Cole and Pierre Corey and people like in that of that caliber that you see promoted so heavily in the alternative media. So they said, why don't you come with us and speak first talk was at the European Parliament. I was terrified. You know, I'm right next to Pierre Corey, who is as cool as a cucumber. And I wanted to sort of, you know, bounce some ideas off him before I got up on stage. And he's sleepy. The man is sleeping right next to me. This is how cool Pierre Corey is. And I even ran over to Christine Anderson, the member of European Parliament, introduced myself. I started giving a talk. And she just blew me off like she was a rock star. And so I gave my talk at the European Parliament. And then after the talk, that's when things really changed. Was interviewed on 10 different TV shows. Christine Anderson bowled her way through the crowd to shake my hand, saying it was the best talk she ever heard. Dr. Robert Malone highlighted me at the end of the session as my talk was the most valuable because it gave the most insight about what everybody was doing and why they were doing it. And then I just started going. Next talk was the Romanian Palace of the Parliament, the second biggest building in the world, has 3,000 rooms. It's pretty grand. And then I went to the Japanese Parliament recently. I went to CPAC. I went to the U.S. Senate. And I'm just there. I mean, everybody will question a lot of people in the group that I travel in. And because this is the way the alternative media is, right? If you're not like the person that's attacking you, you're a bad person. So I'm there in this group to spread the knowledge about mind control, brainwashing, and psychological manipulation, because that's why everybody else is talking. Like Edward Dowd is next to me at the U.S. Senate, and he's talking about all the lost productivity in hours, like billions or nearing trillions of dollars in lost productivity. But the reason that exists is because the people reacted to the mind control.
Yeah.
And the guy next to me who's saying, look at all the heart attacks, look at all the strokes, look at all the injuries, look at all the permanent injuries. Again, that's all happened because people don't know anything about mind control. If they understood that the mind control has very specific characteristics, they would be more prone, not 100% guaranteed, but more prone to identify it before they fall for it. So, yeah, I've been traveling around the world with this group and speaking at the parliaments. I think the next one's in the Mexican parliament in February, I think.
That's awesome. And yeah, I personally, when everything happened over the last few years, I found it fascinating because, like, I don't know whether maybe it's because I worked in sales, I worked in health, studied with the Czech Institute where we learn a lot about memes and programming and all that type of stuff. But straight away, I was like, well, this is the biggest sales and marketing campaign in history, like at least since I've been alive. And it was just so obvious to me that I found it really interesting that people were falling for it. And then when I really kind of looked into it, you know, I looked at, okay, well, this has been going on for their entire lifetime, prepping them for this moment. Yeah, it's not just this one moment where throughout high school, you've been taught to stay with the crowd, don't stand out. If you question authority, you're a bad kid or a naughty kid and things like that. And yeah, I just was super fascinated by it at the beginning. And then I was a little bit caught off guard because I didn't realize how many people would fall for it. And yeah. I just especially a lot of people that worked in health or were healthy people. And I just found out, how could you base your entire career and everything that you studied and then do the exact opposite? And that's, I guess, when I realized that, well, this is a major matrix program, whatever you want to call it, meme, that's throughout humanity. And I guess I wanted to ask, what do you think makes people less prone to it? Why did some people just not fall for it and saw through the bullshit? And why did some people wake up later? And why do some people not even know that anything surreal is happening?
Well, it has to do with strength, the strength to push back on the majority. Now, usually, oddly enough, and unfortunately, that strength has to do with having a really shitty childhood. So if you were, put to the fire as a child to the point where you developed all this mental strength, where, you fortified and got emotional resilience, where you were going to not put up with anything that caused you unnecessary pain ever again. And you put your foot down sometime in your life where you say, I don't care how much pain this causes me. I'm never doing that again, ever. Even if I die, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So I became my childhood was so painful and so unfair and so brutal. You'll have to kill me before I volunteer to hurt myself because I'm so adverse to pain. Like someone could come and do worse to me if I refuse, but that's what you're going to have to do. I'm going to call you out on it. And then when you come and grab me, you're going to have a physical reaction from me that you probably won't be able to deal with as another human being.
Yeah.
So it has to do with a lot of strengthening of the spirit, of the soul, of the mental resilience, and it's really where the person wants to use their intelligence, because we're all pretty smart, we're all pretty intelligent, and it's been shown that the people who complied decided because they weren't as strong, they were going to use their intelligence to buy into an illusion. Because they didn't really have the strength yet to resist it. And then the people who were strong enough used their same intelligence. So the people who complied and the people who resisted, they sort of have the same intelligence quotient. But we used our intelligence to basically buy ourselves into a better reality. And that's what I figured is it's sort of like this line in the sand that only people that have hard situations have a choice to make. Not everybody that is abused in their childhood makes the choice to become stronger, because you can, a lot of people, unfortunately, when they're abused, they make the decision to comply and become weaker. So
generally a lot of them then repeat that pattern to other people as well.
Right. I mean, we all lead by example without opening our mouth. And people who generally comply with many other things in life, and they would have had mentors as well. I mean, our parents have a lot to do with how strong we are. My mother didn't comply either, and she never complies. She'll stand her ground and speak her mind to her own detriment, and has done so for all of her life. And I've watched that as a child, not that she was trying to lead by example for me, but basically that's how leadership works. It's lead by example. And I had a very strong mother. My dad's pretty strong too, but my mother's a lot stronger, and I got a lot more strength from her for sure.
Yeah, my mum's the same. My mum was completely on the same level. We even had the conversation of, so what happens when if one of us ends up in hospital? Because in Australia, if you ended up in hospital, the other person couldn't come in without poisoning themselves.
Yeah.
And I remember my mum said, she's like, well, I'm not poisoning myself. I'm like, Mum, but what happens if I'm in hospital? And, we had that discussion, like a very deep conversation. If something happens and one of us ends up, we don't want the other person to poison themselves. Like, we're strong enough that we can connect in other ways without physically being present. And it was a really interesting moment where I was very clear on my core values and her core values were aligned. And we understood that, say we're in an accident or something like that and we ended up, we didn't want that person to sacrifice their life or put themselves through unnecessary pain to comfort us. And that was a really quite profound moment to have that conversation.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, in my family, as if you're in the hospital and dying, you're going to die. I'm not going to die to come visit you.
Yeah.
I'll pray for your soul, and I'm going to enjoy you while you're alive. If you got like 2 or 3 days to go, it's not the 2 or 3 days that matters. It's it's the 70, 80 years before where you enjoyed the person. So my mom was the same. If you're going in the hospital, I'm not coming in to get you if I got to poison myself. But my mom would try every trick in the book to try and get in, short of falling for the mind control and the pressure. I mean, this pressure, which is synonymous with fear, is, lowers IQ, activates the limbic system, our most primal IQ system. This is where this ruling group likes us to be, in the fear. because you can't rule humans that are outside the fear zone.
Yeah, and I think as well, like you talked about like childhood experience or challenging times, and for me, my childhood, I personally think it was pretty good, but then I had a lot of sickness in my early 20s, and I faced death in those moments where I was so sick that it was a choice. So it's a lot easier to not be here, and I was mentally depressed as well, and I made that choice to can't look after myself and improve myself and work through all of that. And so when you do face death, you're not as afraid of it. It's not something scary. Like, well, if I don't get the juice and I get sick and I die, meh. It's not that afraid. Like, but I believe in my own body and I trust in my own body and I trust in my own authority and intuition enough to not play their game. And I look at it as like a game.
Yeah, I mean, for me as well, I was confident in myself. With all my research on mind control, you're going to come across, I've been researching for 25 years. The group that I travel with that I was alluding to earlier, the International COVID Crisis Summit group, a lot of them have just started researching 4 or 5 years ago because of all the shenanigans.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 25 years. I know there's no threat out there. I know what a threat is. I know what a threat looks like. There was no threat right out of the get-go. Even someone like a statistical expert from Canada, Denny Rancourt, with the government's own data, proved that there was no emergency whatsoever. The hospital bed usage, the hospital admittance percentages, they were all down when they put us in 2 weeks to flatten the curve. There was no emergency whatsoever, but that should be obvious. You don't need a statistical expert to say that. You could just look out the window. No one's getting sick. There's no dead bodies on the road. I mean, this is what a real pandemic looks like. And I think it's important to get some of the mind control out of the bag here, is that our ideas of a pandemic or sort of a viral emergency, they all come from Hollywood media.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Because the thing is, it doesn't matter what movie you watch today. I mean, it could be Hobbs and Shaw. People don't even remember. Hobbs and Shaw is Jason Statham and The Rock. No one remembers, but that was a plot about viruses.
Mm.
And you could go to World War Z, right, with Will Smith. Again, this genre of zombie virus vaccine save the day, this movie genre, I've gone to this website where you can look over the genres and see how many movies of that genre was released in any 5-year block. And for the past 20 years, there was like 400 movies like that. And repetition is the base of 85% of all mind control. The way our subconscious mind works, the most repetitive content gets upregulated to what the truth is. And it's shown this part of the brain doesn't know the difference between real time, imagined thought, and screen time. So the movie screens are there to basically like build and manufacture our ideas of truth on our behalf outside our conscious awareness. And this is why everybody believes in these things, believes in what was on the news. And if you research it and it's not even a deep dive. It's such an insult to the phrase deep dive. Just stick your toe in. This is a narrative made of pure wind. And that's part of the mind control, is to make us believe that there is something invisible that floats in the air that can hurt us. And how terrifying, if you go into the annals of fear, psychological fear, the boogeyman in the closet you can't see, something's under the bed. The most scary movies are The Invisible Man or Something You Can't See. And the group ruling us know this. I mean, all the psychology experiments on dogs and cats and flies, and they don't care what happens to dogs, cats, and flies. They're investigating all this stuff, all this brain function, so they can weaponize it against us. And nothing scares animals, including the human animal, than an invisible threat. Because you don't even have the equipment to test for it. They got the equipment and they got the narrative. You have nothing, so you're going to be there in your brown pants, just soiling yourself, hoping for a solution. So this is how mind control operates.
Yeah, and it was, I don't know, the probably a lot of the things that happened in Australia happened overseas, but there were so many contradictions. Like, if you're sitting down in a restaurant, you're safe, but as soon as you stand up, you're under threat.
Yeah, I mean, this contradiction thing, and see, everybody would see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And they would say to their friend, isn't that stupid? That's so dumb. It doesn't make any sense. But hold on. If you go back in the annals of psychological manipulation to one doctor, because many doctors talk about this, Dr. Joost Merleau, and you can look up his book online. It's free, and it's JOOSTMEERLOO. Now, he has this whole book, and he's such a good writer. If you read just a little bit of his book, you'll understand. He says, confusing the brain shuts down the frontal lobe's ability to think. And then when we can't think, we basically sub out our behavior to our programs that run in this jukebox called the subconscious mind. So confusion is a word, but in the brain, it's a brainwave. Yep. So if you can walk into a restaurant with a mask on, and you have to get in the restaurant, that's a brainwave with like certain peaks and troughs. And then, but if you try to process the information that the virus has a tape measure, and then it can measure if you're sitting or standing, it will only attack you in the standing position. Well, this is an opposite brain waves with opposite troughs and peaks. So it's like going to look at a music song on what's called an oscilloscope. You have these peaks and troughs, and if they're the opposite sound waves, they cancel each other out. You get a flat line. So it's the same thing with brain waves. Is you get confusing information, it goes flatline, which means when you go flatline in the prefrontal cortex, your brain shuts off, and your brain is designed for that to happen. A lot of things get confusing during our lives. And then when you're confused, the brain says, hold on, my best defense of thinking my way out of this is actually offline. So we're going to go to our secondary defense system, which is programming, or basically looking for solution from authority. So what about, the virus is going to attack in a group of 11 and not in a group of 10. So now the virus can count, right? It makes no sense. Or what about the curfew? The virus is going to attack at 10:01 p.m. in the curfew zone, but not at 9:59. So your brain's like, well, the virus must have a watch. And this totally shuts down your thinking. Or even in North America, where, I'm Canadian, they were giving out free lap dances for people at strip joints, for people that took the shot, breaking the 6-foot distance rule. And so you get all these contradictory messages. And so the average person thinks, oh, this is just happening by chance. But if you understand the mind control psychology, and it's so simple, confuse them. And of course, just don't confuse them with the virus narrative. Confuse them with everything else. And like, okay, the woman of the year is a man.
Yeah.
And so the brain's like, whoa, what? Like, I thought the viral narrative was confusing. So when you're in the mind control business and you're plotting all this, this script out, you're going to put it on the chalkboard in the boardroom and say, not only confuse them with all this stuff, confuse them with absolutely everything. So now females are winning gold medals and in the boxing and beating up women and right on the TV, the feminists are saying nothing as a man dressed as a woman pummels another female, breaks her jaw in the boxing match. Like the brain is reeling with confusion. And this is why they did it. It's not chance. It's not happenstance. It's not coincidence. It's weaponized psychology because it's proven that if you confuse the audience, you can bend probably about 40% of them more to the mind control modalities that you're launching at them during that time.
It's no secret that doTerra has had a huge positive impact on my life, specifically around my mental health and my immune system. I've been doing this business now for 10 years and I can ship these products to anyone, anywhere in the world within 7 days. So if you're needing a good night's sleep, reducing your stress, if you're feeling anxious, overwhelmed, need some immune support, digestive support, metabolic health support, pretty much anything I can think of, these oils and doTerra product range can support you. Now, I've created a landing page. It's thathealthdude.com/doTerra, or you can also reach out to me in your DMs and I can make a custom package specifically for your needs. There's two ways. Either become a customer, that's 90% of my business, or if you've got a wellness brand and a business, you can use doTerra and me, the perks are you get me as a fulfillment partner to really support and enhance the vitality of your customer base. Just go to thathealthdude.com/doTerra or send me a message in any of my social platforms in a DM.
So people don't even know that.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, the challenging, I guess, story or belief is why. Why? Who are these people? Who is this group and why would they do it? And I think because most people are good-hearted people, that doesn't cross, like they would never think to have such an evil, narcissistic, controlling plot because it's just not generally in human beings' nature. So it's such a big outside thing, like why would, and how many people are involved in this and why is everybody kind of going along with it, and why is there only a small group of people? A lot of doctors that stood up used to be really well profound doctors, and as soon as they stood up, then there's a story to crush them and destroy them, and it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, well, you're right, but that's very confusing, right? Because you would never do it, and then you get this flat line in the prefrontal cortex. Well, if I wouldn't do it, obviously you can't imagine that they would be doing it. But that's exactly what they're doing. Now, the reason they do it is quite simple. They're already stealing 50% or more of your income for them and their friends. So all this money to the Ukraine and all the weapons to the Ukraine and all the money that they're putting, you can't steal 10,000 in cash from the government, but you can write a check for $300 million and call all the TV stations and give it to some other guy. And then it just disappears into the nethersphere to be stolen by you and your friends. This is what government's about. So you're funding with your taxes all this theft. Now, you got to be really careful with people that are stealing your money because they're bad people. Now, if you give a pirate 50% of your money, do you really think they're going to stop there, given that patterns only become stronger in the neurology of any human being? Do you think they're going to stop at 50? Do you think they're going to stop at 60? Do you think they're going to stop at 70? When do you think in this evil group someone says, let's just take it all? And someone says, well, if we take it all, then they can't live. And they say, well, okay, well, let's kill them. It's so simple, but the average person can't even, recognize or comprehend that level of evil. But that's where evil humans eventually get to is, let's just not only take 50% of their money, let's take all of it. And the person says, well, all of their income, they can't live. How are they going to maintain their house or their car? Let's get rid of them and take their house and take their car and take their gold and take their crypto. Let's just take it all. And then when they're all gone, because this is the plot they're trying to live out, when they're all gone, we'll keep a couple, like any other farming operation. We'll repopulate the human farm and rent the new people all the houses and residences and condos and buildings we stole. We'll own it all. They'll have to pay us the rent, and we'll recreate the history that some disease or global warming or something else wiped everybody else out, and we'll teach that in the schools. This is not a complicated, this is a heist. This is about theft. And you can see that they're going after the seniors first because they offer a point of reference, historical reference to tell people, hey, you know what? It wasn't always like this, We had freedom. They're getting rid of the historical reference of the seniors. The seniors as well get payments from the government. And so for every senior in Canada that's being eliminated, you get the government, this crime syndicate is saving maybe $4,000 a month in healthcare and direct payouts for every senior. So it doesn't take more than, say, 3 million seniors in Canada removed to put $1 trillion back in the coffers for new theft by this crime syndicate. $1 trillion. So, why are they doing it? Well, why do you think you're getting taxed in the first place? It's not for the roads, okay? It's not for the roads.
The bridges.
It's the bridge. No, it's for them and their friends. Like, I was just on vacation and, my bed was made. I went to hotels. My bed got made. My breakfast got made. I went to restaurants every day. I can only maintain that for about 2 weeks. Okay. And then I got to go back and go back into the revenue generated system. These people, that's how they live. They don't work. Now, they don't work because they've been doing this scam for a long time. They couldn't even, Prince Charles couldn't even run a corner store successfully. All he knows is theft, mind control, and psychological manipulation. That's all they know. So they're not going to just start working. They're just going to, and they need to sort of get rid of us because we're on to them, right? It's not only about stealing Jason's stuff. It's about shutting that guy up, because if Jason's word gets out, we're going to figure out that this ruling group is the weakest of the human herd. Their only 2 weapons are mind control and poison. And if we recognize the mind control and say no to the poison, they'll crumble without us putting a hand on them. So you can see that they're very nervous about what's going on right now.
Yeah, you can actually see the desperation, which it's a good thing, but also when people are desperate, you're like, oh shit, which way is this going to go?
It could go sideways.
Yeah, it can go very sideways. But that's something that there's even lots of movies about that. Where what's the one? I think it's a Justin Timberlake. It's called In Time, and they have the amount the amount of time that they have, and everyone else is trying just to get a coffee or get on the bus, and it keeps going up, and they got to work harder, but their body can only work so hard. That movie was, I don't know, a very long time ago, and still there's other ones. There's another really good one that I really liked called The Giver, and there's heaps of movies where they kind of have the storyline that, humanity got wiped themselves out in a war or a global disaster, but now we've got this pristine society. And then people start to kind of question this and be like, I think this is all bullshit. And they realize their whole society is all BS.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things that we think are real are starting to be shown as not real. Like, the doctor is not the smartest guy in the classroom. He's the best repeater. They're not health experts because they can't do anything healthy. No one who goes to them is healthy. The person who goes to the doctor the most is the most unhealthy. The person who never goes is the most healthy. The person who takes the most shots is the most sick. The person who takes no shots whatsoever is the most fit. So we're starting to realize, the observations in the world don't match the repetitive, basically propaganda that's getting pushed down our throats. And people are wondering, how far does this go? And their safety protocols or safety restrictions in their mind is their strength, is what their strength or weakness is what allows them to go out to the outer edges of that, because it's really scary, because the world becomes very insecure if you don't have any of these hard and fast rules, especially if you're weak. Like if if the doctors aren't health experts, how are you, little old you, you're born a sinner. You're a biological happenstance flying on a rock throughout the universe with no firm reason for being here. You're nobody. You're a speck on the ass of the universe. So how are you ever going to get enough strength to take care of your own affairs? And so that's a mind control sort of program on its own, where it's always little old me program. I need the government. I need the doctor. And what you'll see is that's the big trick, is they'll disempower you to the point where you'll beg to be enslaved, beg to be taxed. You want your money stolen. You'll wait in line to vote for the next guy that's going to steal half your money. Have you ever thought about a society where no one steals your money? What about that? And people are starting, and person's like, keep all my money. Oh my God, I can't even, their head starts spinning. And then they know they would love to keep the money part, but can someone boss me around? And that's repetition is so key there, because we're bossed around our entire life, starting, in the government school system, because that's the conditioning they want. The average person can't boss themselves around. As an entrepreneur, I started my first business when I was 24 years old. I'm 54 now. And basically it's been 30 years. What entrepreneurship is, you're bossing yourself around every day. I bossed myself out of bed today. I bossed myself to the gym. I bossed myself to, provide value for people inside my tribal circle so that I could give them energy so they could have a better life. They give me money, energy in return. But the average person, they'd love the keeping the money part, but who's going to boss them around? They just don't have any practice in it. If you never practice skating, ice hockey, you're not going to be very good at it the first day. But if you stick with it, you can become great at it. And this is why I teach entrepreneurship as well, because it's the fine art of bossing yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely, I've been self-employed for as long as I can remember. There was times when my job was, if you wanted to go out and make money, you'd go and stand on the street. And that's when I used to work in Surfers Paradise selling party tickets. And if I didn't make any money, I'd just stand there longer.
That's right.
And I'd have to improve. And, the only person to blame for not making the money was myself. And that's a harsh reality, is when you go out in that entrepreneurship or your business isn't doing as well as you want. And you can start to blame, the economy and this and that. And truth is that there's people that are less skilled than me, have less knowledge than me, that make more money than me and do things. And it's like they're saying the best-selling author doesn't mean that they're the best author, right? People are out there, and there's people that are making a lot of money that you're like, wow, how did you do that? And that's I really love the stories of hearing how people have made money, and you're like, oh, that's a bloody good idea. And it's so bloody simple. And people only see the success stories; they don't see the times when whether you have mental health challenges or health challenges or financial relationship, all the things that are happening that are kind of designed to confuse you. And you have to continually go inside and continually surround yourself with good people and continually, I guess, show up and be that boss and be that authority figure for yourself. Yeah, it is easier just to get people to tell you what you to do. And I found that really interesting with health, where clients just want you to, what do I do? And it's when you're trying to be a practitioner like we are as check practitioners, where we don't have them for life. We're trying to empower them to do. But they don't, as you were saying at the beginning, they don't want to be empowered. They just tell me what to do, and I'll probably do 5% of it and kind of sabotage myself and continue to sabotage myself just so that I'm at that safe level where I'm paying you enough. I'll pay you and I'll do 2% of it or 5% of it so that I don't feel bad that I'm wasting my money. But I don't want to do 100% because then I'd get the results and then I'd be on my own.
It's exactly right. I mean, the phrase will be, whether it's in government school, your teacher or mentors, you can be anything you want, especially inside the system. They'll always say you can be anything you want to be, right? But they'll also say, but don't make any mistakes. And this is impossible to reconcile because I've made more mistakes and lost more money than most people have made in their lifetime. So the thing is, there's so many mistakes I've made, but they're just ways that, the goal isn't going to be accomplished. So you start narrowing down through your mistakes the path that you're going to take. And in government school, which is basically a mind control institution, they're going to teach you that making a mistake is the worst thing in your life, that you should, commit suicide if you get an F or if you fail. And so this is what drives a lot of the compliance with when the government, again, the same sort of force comes in and says, you got to take the shot. And then the average person who has this mind control programming from school, that making a mistake will completely devastate them spiritually and psychologically. They're like, well, I don't want to make a mistake. How about if I don't take it and it's a mistake? I'm like, it's okay. It's all right. But they're so afraid to make a mistake. And this is adversarial to business. It's adversarial to living your best life. It's adversarial to you discovering who you really are and discovering why you're here, because you're going to make mistakes. You can be anything you want, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes getting there. Don't let the fear of making a mistake put you in a box, because they'll give you that box. They'll give you that. Here you go, Jim. Here you go, Judy. Here's the safe box to be in. Work this job you hate. I was just listening to a podcast before I came on today. It said 74% Americans hate their jobs. 4%. Here's a job you hate. I'm going to steal half your income. I'm going to steal it from my friends. It's not even for the roads. And basically, I'll give you 3 weeks of vacation a year. It'll be a safe and secure and predictable routine of misery, mediocrity, and below average living, but at least it's predictable. That's predictable is just another word for safety inside the mind. And what you have to do is condition yourself to be safe. You're just safe anyway. I had that problem for so many years. Like the businesses I've opened and run myself or mentored people to open or partnered in have generated $200 million over my 30-year career. Now, I don't have anywhere close to $200 million. But when push comes down to shove, I can generate money to at least pay for my organic food, my organic water, and put a roof over my head. This is the kind of confidence that you have to have all the time, whether things are going great or whether it's going not so great, because business is up and down. Oh. Every day isn't like the most revenue you've ever made. Some days suck. Some days are great. Like there was 3 days ago, I made nothing for 3 days. And then the next day I made like $15,000. Right? So if you're crapping your pants, you got your brown pants on the days you make nothing, well, then business is going to feel like terrible. But you have to just go with that confidence, and you're not going to get that confidence from the system. They remove the confidence so they can dominate you. You'll have to find a mentor. Anybody. I'm not saying come to me as your mentor. I do have programs like this. Find someone who's already walked the path, already walked up Success Mountain, and they'll come back and they'll teach you how, and they can help you get there and make it easier. That's all you really have to do, is know that the system is there to siphon your energy away. And the system is where your dreams go to die. This is where and it takes a while to get out of it. Don't be impatient. If I don't even suggest driving a Ferrari ever, but just don't be impatient. Just put the time in. You live in the years anyway, right? Put the time in to make something of yourself.
Yeah, it is that level of impatience where people don't want to sacrifice their level of comfort to go after what their heart truly desires. Well, I've got my Netflix and I've got my sports that I watch and I've got my favorite beer and I can just, like, I live in the country, so there's no Uber Eats here, but I can just quickly get their food delivered to their door and they can have comfort. I think it's one of the things more in the Western society, which in my personal opinion is why people have been so easy to program, is because it was a pretty comfortable level of life. Especially in Australia, it was pretty comfortable till a few years ago. And, you'd always see the ads of Africa and all these countries. And all these countries are countries that these same people have gone in and stole everything. But for some reason, we had this, I guess, belief that, they would never do it to us. And now they've just gone, all right, now we're coming after you at a higher level. And people's comfort level is dropping very quickly. And I think in a sort of way, that's kind of a blessing, because a lot of people have gone, wait a minute, you're telling me that the economy is the best that it's ever been, but I'm struggling to put food on my table. And these contradictions are so, I guess, radical now that it's not cancelling each other out. It's actually people are going, there's something switching on. And I guess, what is that part of people that switches on to the bullshit radar?
Well, everybody has their pain threshold, and they're all going to meet it. Because if you allow a band, a crime syndicate, a group of crime syndicate psychopaths to take 50, 60% of your money, they're not going to stop. They're going to try and take it all. So this is why in government, there is no restriction on how much they can tax you. And that should have been your first clue. That should have been your first clue right out of the womb, that there is no limit. And when's the last time a politician went out and tried to rally themselves into a position of power, saying, you know what, there's got to be a limit to how much we can spend. There's got to be a budget that we can't break. There's got to be a budget for taxing you and stealing your money that we will never go over. So I promise you, public, that if you elect me, I will never go over taking more than 40% of your total income to pay for this, this, and this. And if we can't pay for it, we're not going to do it. I'm not going to expect you to pay it on my behalf, just because, we're very inefficient at governing the outlays of your finances that you give to us. That's never, ever been said. That should have been your first clue. They have no limit to how much they will steal from you, because they intend to steal it all. They intend to enslave you. It was like this walk around, this slavery this old-fashioned slavery turned into new-fashioned slavery 2.0. Now they're coming back to the old 1.0 model, where they'll you'll own nothing and be happy. What do you think that means? That means slavery 1.0. They got everything. You used to own it. They took it. They stole it with their fabricated ideas. That are fortified with mind control. Climate change, dangerous weather. White people are bad. Too many people on the earth.
White males. Oh, we're the most deadliest thing on the planet right now, aren't we?
Because they go in their boardrooms and say, who's the most likely to resist this slavery 1.0 reintroduction? White people, because they've tasted what it's like not to be a slave. They're like, we're not going back. They're like, you're the enemy now. You're the problem. You're wrecking the world. They will always accuse you of doing what they're doing in broad daylight. And they'll parade it down Main Street. You'll say, you're doing it. You're wrecking the earth. All this is complete. A narrative made of pure wind. And they'll say, no, it's you. You're the problem.
Yeah.
And they're so good at psychologically manipulating people. I mean, we have people in Canada committing suicide by medical doctor. It's called MAID, medical assistance in dying, because they're trying to kill themselves to save the earth. People volunteering to kill themselves based on a complete lie. That's how effective mind control can be. And that's why it's the most important topic of all the topics we're talking about today, because they can make you believe and do anything. They might not even have to steal your house. You might even volunteer it, because they'll just, just like that. I took my vaccine profile picture. I gave my house away profile picture. They'll give anybody that's compliant all the emotional rewards and limelight that they need to keep this horse and pony show going down the road.
Lighthouse is my signature 6 or 12-month one-on-one mentorship program. It's pretty much where I've gathered all my life experience as studying with the Czech Institute for 15 years, my intuitive gifts, my personal challenges, which I do not wish upon anybody, and to fast track you to where you want to go. And my approach is very simple. One, it's all about vitality and life force. Change takes a truck ton of energy. So you need that vitality and life force to ground you so that you're resilient when blockages come up, and they will. Two, we've got to get you clear, get that clarity on where you're going, because once you've got that little bit of life force back, you can start to dream bigger, that biggest vision for your life. And then three, it's all about confidence. Now, as a lighthouse, you may have weathered many a storm. You may feel battered, you may feel broken, you may feel defeated. But as we rebuild your confidence, you start to shine bright, and it helps to guide others home, because they see that beacon of hope, that brightness of you sharing your truth, sharing the essence of who you are. And the truth is, the world really needs a lot of lighthouses right now, because people are stuck, people are overwhelmed, and we need your brilliance, that light within inside you, to be shining so bright that people can spot you from a bloody mile away. Now, all you got to do is head on over to thathealthdude.com/lighthouse, or send me a DM on any of my socials and we can chat and see if it works. I take on a few clients every year, and let's see if we can make some magic happen.
So I tell people, look, the solution here is what you do, what I do, what all the Czech professionals do. The first thing is you got to be strong in the body. To be strong in the mind, because you might have to be strong in the body to defend yourself. No one's going to win a fight with this group in a motorized scooter with an IV bag duct taped to the side. That's certainly not going to be, the charge that takes down this evil crime syndicate. We got to take our health back, because again, this group has two very effective modalities of control: poison to make you weak, and mind control to also make you volunteer for your own poisoning. It's all this like circular loop, right? So I tell people, just get strong. Work with Nicholas, work on your own health. Stop putting poison in your mouth. Stop ingesting it. Stop injecting it. You don't have to find this group. You don't have to go hunt down Trudeau or whatever psychopath is leading Australia. Who's the lead psychopath criminal? The crime minister. Who's the crime minister in Australia right now?
To be honest, I don't even know, because I'm not worried about that. I don't give them power. Yeah, as you're saying, I look after my health and my audience and my circle. And these, you always see people posting on social media, this celebrity died, or this, I don't know who a lot of these people are, because I don't really care. They're not important to me. They can think they're important, but they're not. That's just the truth of it.
Yes, you don't have to find those people. You just got to go into your own fridge, open your own cupboards, turn off the social media, and start a passionate love affair with yourself. People are missing that. It's okay to love yourself. You need to love yourself to get out of this mess. You have to take pride in your physical body. It's not shallow. I mean, I'm not going to go cut myself up or do anything artificial, but you got to take pride in your health. You got to take pride in yourself. You got to take pride in the routine of being your best self, even though everybody around you is mediocre, and there will be a massive group pressure, neurological effect that you will stand out and you will be attacked if you're better. That's what the strength is for. Let them attack you. That's why you need the strength, so you can resist the attack.
Yeah, and that was for me, in Australia, we have such a massive drinking culture, and you're drinking and following sports. And I was fully in that until I got so sick that I was repulsed by alcohol. My body just couldn't take it. And I'll have a drink maybe once or twice a year, but I just don't enjoy it. And I remember that time where all my friends were out on a Friday, Saturday night, and I was at home learning to love myself, learning about who I was, and discovering all these programs that I'd had about myself. And it is a very challenging and lonely time. And it was a lot easier. The funny thing is, I was paying a check practitioner in Australia, and I was doing all these things, going to the organic markets on the Sunday morning, but I was going out the Saturday night before and getting drunk. And I was still paying him my money. Like, that's how deep the programming was. And that took months, actually took years, eventually to the point where I was still in that job, but I wouldn't go out drinking. Or I would go out, but I wouldn't drink. And then I stopped going out. And then Sunday became this ritual of going to the markets and getting up early. But it took time. And I started taking people with me. And then they were all hungover coming to the farmer's market with me. And now some of them have had home births and they're all into their natural health. And it starts with you. And I find the kind of tipping point is you will feel this kind of sense inside of you, and you can ignore that sense like I did for so many years. And that led me to become so sick. My body just kind of overrode me and said, nah, enough's enough. And a lot of people will have to hit that wall, but they might spend 3 or 4 years where they're like, drinking, it's not as fun as it used to be. That group is a bit too dramatic for me now. Like, I feel drained associating with these people. They don't really know who I am. They only know this part of my personality. And it eventually you have to go out and go, well, I want to be me. I want to be who I came here to be.
If drinking made me feel good, I'd still be drinking.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time. Like, all the mind control was about drinking is where your best life is going to be found. I wanted to get to the top of the ruling pyramid where the best parties and the most beautiful girls were, where there was people with Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and I'd do anything to get there. And from the programming, I said, all I have to do is drink and do some drugs, and then eventually my life will be fulfilled. I can't wait to drink. I can't wait to do drugs at 19 or 20 years old. I can't wait. I was this empty, soulless North American meatbag looking for, the pot of gold at the end of that alcohol rainbow, and I almost killed myself trying to fulfill that programming. I was doing cocaine. I was drinking. I was doing steroids. I was just doing everything that the programming told me. And this group, they put out all that programming on purpose. And they don't care which self-destructive path you walk. You want to smoke, but don't want to do steroids? Great. You want to do steroids, but don't want to smoke marijuana? That's also great. You want to drink, but you don't want to stay up late? They'll be like, pick anything you want to destroy yourself, because we can't rule a society of strong, independent, and empowered people. That's why they have all this programming out. And I was almost dead at 29 years old, almost dead at 29. Couldn't even walk up the stairs of my own fitness club that was very large, very successful. I would hobble up. I had this electrical shock feeling, the sciatica, from basically my liver, my kidneys screaming out through my nervous system. And so guess who I hired? I hired a Czech practitioner as well, Janice Marshall, one of the most famous. And she came down, looked at me like Czech professionals do, knew that I had all these problems, but they were all stemming from the media, from the movies, from the radio songs that I was listening to, lying to me and programming me to believe that destroying myself would eventually get me to the best life ever. And so she came in knowing how screwed up I was mentally, knowing that my disease was the symptoms of the programming. She started working on me gently. And over time, like you said, I quit alcohol. It took me 3 years to quit alcohol. But it was every month I would drink less and less and less. And then when I stopped drinking, I did a 9-year stint with not one sip of alcohol to my lips. 0. And then my friend who owned a bar in Santorini, he passed away. His wife phoned me and said his dying wish is everybody come back to the bar and party like we did when we were kids. And I said, tonight's the night. We're going to drink again. So, and I tell people that's not a fail. 9 years of not drinking with 3 years preceding it of every month lower and lower amounts of poison in my body, that's a complete win. It's about progress. It's not about perfection. And a lot of people, like, you're going to go in and out of your addictions, but the farther you are away for the longer periods of time outside your addiction, you're winning. You're totally winning. So people have to keep that in perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of the individual journey is we will all have, there is this plethora, this smorgasbord of poisons. Take your pick. You can choose them all, or you can choose one of them, and it's going to destroy you eventually. And I think what's the biggest challenge is a lot of people don't, for me, my gift was I destroyed myself at 25. And so I didn't have to wait till I was 40 or 50 or 60. And a lot of people will poison themselves with this smorgasbord until they hit 50. And then a lot of them don't have the energy or the power or the pizzazz to shift. So they just stay. But what I'm noticing is more and more people are having those altering moments earlier. And they're more, maybe it's a universal awakening. I don't know what it is. The program is kind of dissipating. But I'm noticing that it's happening at a rapid rate, and you notice it because it's not just happening in Australia. Like when I first thought, I was like, the question, am I losing my mind? Like, is this really happening? And then other people will be like, they give you that justification. You're like, okay, I'm not losing my mind because that's a respected person and I trust that person, and that person's an expert, like Paul Chek, for example, talking up about this nonsense. So when you have someone like that, you're like, okay, well, I've been studying him and I've worked with him. I've seen him in person. I know that this person is very connected to who they are. And if they're speaking up about it, I'm not going crazy. And so I guess that's the blessing of the internet and the connections that we have is we can start to see that this is a global thing, this global awakening, this global program is dissipating, and that's why I wanted to have you on, because you are the expert and one of the experts. And so I wanted to ask, the Christoff report is how people connect with you.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to get a hold of me, because I'll post on social media, but like everybody else, I have to soften the edges. I don't get to say exactly what I want to say, and people need the truth, and they need it like a blast furnace door opening just to sort of wake them up. And the awakening is accelerating. Absolutely. They can email me at info@jchristoff.com. So a single initial J. Christoff is Christ with an OFF on the end. So info@jchristoff.com. I'll put you on my private email list. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. And I'll slow drip you information over time about health, entrepreneurship, the ancient cult that's trying to kill everybody, how to defend yourself against that ancient death cult, and basically empowering you and disempowering any fabricated liaria-based ideas that they put in your head about what your innate human potential is.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, this has been going on since before we were born. This war, whatever you want to call it. But as you said, these people aren't that intelligent. They've just been in it for a very long time. They're not that powerful. They seem powerful and they can seem scary, but there are two things that they do, and they just do them on repeat.
Yeah. And I mean, the Hulk, when he took Loki in the movie, I think it was Avengers, and he threw Loki bang, 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 with one arm, that's strong. There's a difference between someone who can dominate you like the Hulk did to Loki, but this group, they're the weakest of this. They're like it's a revenge of the nerds. They don't have any physical strength. They only have mind control technology to make you destroy yourself. and poison yourself. Now, if you know lots about this mind control technology, you won't poison yourself. And that's when they just fade away into the dust of history. Because without their mental trickery, which is black magic and sorcery or pharmakia, these are all ancient words because that's where they come from. This is how old the group is. Without these mental tricks, black magic poisons, so that you end up being very interested in hurting yourself, wasting your energy, wasting your life energy. They have no power. So you have all the power. As soon as you stop hurting yourself, you remove all the power from them.
Awesome. It's an exciting time to be alive, my friend. Is there any final things that you would like to say? Any words of wisdom, any jokes, any stories that you'd like to finish with?
I would just tell people, again, remember, it's about progress. It's not about perfection. I mean, I remember doing a coaching call with one guy, and I have, the intake forms, and it says, how many coffees do you have a day? And he says 3. And I said, well, that's not too bad. He goes, no, 3 pots of coffee. Caffeine is a real problem with your health. I said, what? 3 pots. So I said, okay, this is the starting point. Like Paul Chek says, if you're having vodka, have organic vodka. You're smoking tobacco, go to organic tobacco. We got him down by the time, empowered him, get him out the door so he can keep going on his own. He was down to 1 pot. I met him 2 years or 3 years later, 2.5 years later. He was down to like 1 cup of coffee every 3 days. This is a complete win. So don't beat yourself up. Start making the steps in the right direction. Be patient with yourself. Love your way through it. And just, lead by example for your family, for yourself, for your community. That's what we need now the most.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for coming on, my friend. And I'll put all your details in the show notes so people can reach out to you and learn from your wisdom. And yeah, just keep getting into those buildings, those political rooms, and keep messing with their heads a little bit. It's going to be great.
I will. Absolutely, Nicholas. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.